Chapter 1. Why Alien Ships Never Survive Flying Past Earth. Dr. Owen Marcus squinted at the sudden, jagged peaks on his screen, a cascade of data streaming across in erratic pulses. It was 2:13 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the quiet hum of the observatory was broken only by his own rapid typing and the low rumble of rain outside. He'd spent the last 6 years in this remote, high-altitude lab, scanning the cosmos for anything unusual. But now, as he leaned closer to the monitor, he knew he'd found it. "This can't be a mistake," he muttered, adjusting the frequency with careful, jittery fingers. He tapped his keyboard, isolating the anomaly, and brought up a spectral graph that confirmed his suspicion. A repeating signal, too ordered to be natural, was moving toward Earth from the outer edge of the solar system. His heart hammered in his chest, the thrill of discovery colliding with a creeping sense of dread. Owen took a deep breath, grabbed his phone, and dialed. After 2 rings, Major Lena Torres picked up, her voice brisk despite the late hour. "This better be good, Marcus." "Lena, I know I found something," he said, his voice barely controlled. "We're looking at a signal, something big, metallic, and fast, aimed right at Earth." A pause crackled on the other end. Then, in a tone laced with skepticism, Lena replied, "Owen, we've had this talk before. Every alien threat you flagged has turned out to be nothing but a blip or a glitch or—" "This is different," Owen interrupted, his tone more forceful than he intended. "It's consistent, and it's closing in. I'm telling you, we're looking at a ship. This isn't another glitch." He emphasized the last word, irritated at the reminder of the dismissals he'd received from colleagues, and even Lena herself, over the years. "All right, calm down," she sighed. "Send me the data. If it's as serious as you say, I'll take a look." Within minutes, Owen's transmission reached Lena, who sat in her office at the Military Strategic Command Center. As she scrutinized the data on her own monitor, her eyes narrowed. The readings were sharp and eerily rhythmic, a signal and structure too organized to be natural. As if sensing her interest, the signal grew clearer, tightening like a coiled spring. Back in the observatory, Owen watched the signal intensify, his excitement shadowed by an uneasy realization. Whatever was aboard that ship wasn't slowing down. They had to act. "Lena," he pressed, his voice trembling slightly, "we can't ignore this. This thing is inbound and fast. I need authorization to alert the satellite grid and increase surveillance. We have to prepare." A slight hesitation. "Then, fine. I'll get you access." Her voice held a wary edge, but Owen knew he had her attention now. "But Owen, if this turns out to be nothing, if it's nothing, I'll be the first to say I was wrong." "But I don't think I am," he replied, determination hardening his tone. Miles above the Earth, in the dark, icy void, Captain Zevran of the Empire's prime exploratory fleet watched as his ship cut silently through space. The ship was a fortress of alien engineering, sleek, impervious, and equipped with a technology far beyond anything Earth could imagine. Zevran's gaze swept over the screens, which displayed Earth as a small, blue to growing ever larger. This world was to be their next conquest, and he was confident in the superiority of their tech against what he deemed a primitive, undeveloped planet. "Captain," an officer's voice crackled through the silence. "We're detecting a mild disturbance on the outer hull. Some form of interference." Zevran scoffed. "Interference? From where?" "From Earth, sir. Their atmosphere, it seems." Zevran laughed, a low, amused sound. "The electromagnetic field of a backwater planet won't stop us. Ignore it and maintain course." At the observatory, Owen's screen blinked with the incoming data from the newly activated satellite array. His eyes widened as he watched the readings, a distortion forming in the ship's path as it neared Earth. It was almost as if the planet's magnetic field was pushing back, distorting frequencies in ways he hadn't anticipated. He spoke quickly into his headset. "Lena, are you seeing this?" "Yes. Our systems are picking up interference, but we're still not certain it's affecting their ship." "Could just be static," she replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "It's not just static," Owen insisted. "There's a rhythm to it, a pattern. Earth's magnetic field isn't just passive. It's interacting with their systems. If I'm right, it might be disrupting them in ways they don't expect. A beat of silence. Then Lena spoke in a low tone. All right, what's the plan? Owen's fingers flew over the keyboard, running calculations he'd once only theorized. We need to amplify the interference. Use the satellite grid to bounce back a signal and create an electromagnetic pulse. A pulse strong enough to interfere with their systems. It's risky, but it could stall them. Wait, you're saying we weaponize Earth's natural defenses? Lena's voice held a mix of doubt and intrigue. Precisely. It's all we have. Their tech is light years ahead of ours, but they don't know Earth like we do. Our planet may be our best defense. Lena took a deep breath. You're sure about this? As sure as I'll ever be, Owen replied, his voice resolute. Let's give them a warm welcome. Above Earth, Captain Zevran's confidence began to waver as the interference intensified, lights flickering in the command deck. He clenched his jaw, his fingers digging into the arms of his chair as he barked. What is happening? Unknown interference is spreading across all channels, Captain, a panicked voice replied. It's as if the planet itself is attacking us. Zevran's eyes narrowed, a chill creeping down his spine as he realized that Earth was not as defenseless as he had assumed. Back in the observatory, Owen leaned forward, eyes fixed on the flickering readouts as his makeshift plan began to take effect. A thrill of fear and exhilaration shot through him. For the first time, he believed he might actually be right, and that Earth had just become far more than a passive target. To be continued. Chapter 2. Why Alien Ships Never Survive Flying Past Earth. A crackling hum reverberated through the observatory as Dr. Owen Marcus adjusted the signal amplifier, eyes locked on the satellite feed displaying the alien ship's disruptive flight path. The interference had intensified, pushing the vessel slightly off course and forcing them to slow their approach. Owen let out a shaky breath. He was onto something, though the exact mechanics of the interference were still a mystery. Major Lena Torres's voice broke over the radio, sharp and precise. Owen, the grid set up. I've reallocated 2 more satellites for the pulse. You're clear to begin. Good, he replied, his voice laced with a tense excitement. Let's see how they handle a direct surge. Sending pulse calibration now. Outside the Earth's atmosphere, the alien vessel shimmered as it fought to stabilize against a force it had never encountered. Captain Zevran's fists clenched around the arms of his command chair, watching as instruments flashed warnings and system monitors blared with unreadable alerts. Despite all their advanced technology, the alien crew was ill-prepared for a planet's natural defenses to turn against them. Report! Zevran barked at his chief engineer, a slender officer whose face was etched with panic. It's unprecedented, Captain. This interference, these energy waves from Earth, they're generating distortions in our systems, especially the communications and navigation. Every attempt to push through only amplifies the effect. Zevran's jaw tightened as he struggled to mask his rising frustration. They're primitives. They shouldn't have the capacity to create anything of this magnitude. It's not their technology, Captain, the engineer stammered, glancing nervously at the control panel. It's the planet itself. Zevran's eyes narrowed, a mixture of confusion and fear flickering across his face. For the first time, he entertained the idea that Earth might possess natural defenses, ones they'd failed to anticipate. Yet he was determined to press forward. Retreat was not an option for a captain of the Empire. Find a solution, he ordered through gritted teeth. And make it quick. Back on Earth, in the sterile glow of the observatory, Owen and Lena monitored the alien ship's turbulence with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The readings showed steady increases in interference as Earth's electromagnetic field rebounded off the alien hull, agitating the foreign systems. But Owen knew this wouldn't hold them forever. We're making a dent, Lena murmured, her voice equal parts satisfaction and caution. But they're adapting. If they find a way to buffer this interference, we might lose our only edge. Owen rubbed the back of his neck, mind racing as he stared at the data readouts. Earth's magnetic field might keep them off balance for a bit, but we need to amplify it, maybe harness a stronger natural pulse. He paused, then looked up, a plan forming in his mind. The Northern Lights. Lena gave him a skeptical look. The Aurora Borealis? You're saying we use the poles? Exactly. The auroras are direct expressions of our geomagnetic activity, and they're strongest right now. If we can sync with that energy, we could create a concentrated pulse, something they can't recalibrate against as quickly. She raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. And how do you plan to harness the Northern Lights? Not directly, he replied, scrambling to connect their systems. We'll use the grid to sync with the pulses from the magnetic poles, channeling the effect right toward their ship. After a brief hesitation, Lena nodded, the doubt giving way to determination. If we're doing this, we better make it count. High above, Captain Zevran stared out the viewport as green and blue lights danced along the upper edge of Earth's atmosphere, shimmering and undulating in mesmerizing waves. He felt a slight shiver as the lights grew brighter, a subtle warning his instincts couldn't quite ignore. Something about this planet, the colors, the power, seemed alive, volatile, and vengeful. Captain, we're detecting another surge, his engineer reported, tension lining his words. It's different this time. It's synchronizing with our system somehow. Before Zevran could respond, a blinding flash swept through the command deck as their shields buckled, destabilized by the magnetic pulse radiating from Earth. Crew members shouted in alarm as control panels blinked and fizzled, sending waves of static through the ship. The once pristine command deck now flickered with warning lights, red and orange halos casting harsh shadows across the room. Adjust course, Zevran commanded, his voice cracking under the strain. But the navigation systems refused to respond, locked in a feedback loop as Earth's magnetic energy resonated through their circuitry. The engineer turned to him, face pale and strained. Captain, we're losing control of the primary thrusters. Every adjustment we make just increases the distortion. Zevran's expression darkened as he processed the scope of their predicament. For the first time, he allowed himself to consider an unthinkable question. Had he underestimated Earth? Not directly, he replied, scrambling to connect their systems. We'll use the grid to sync with the pulses from the magnetic poles, channeling the effect right toward their ship. After a brief hesitation, Lena nodded, the doubt giving way to determination. If we're doing this, we better make it count. High above, Captain Zevran stared out the viewport as green and blue lights danced along the upper edge of Earth's atmosphere, shimmering and undulating in mesmerizing waves. He felt a slight shiver as the lights grew brighter, a subtle warning his instincts couldn't quite ignore. Something about this planet, the colors, the power, seemed alive, volatile, and vengeful. Captain, we're detecting another surge, his engineer reported, tension lining his words. It's different this time. It's synchronizing with our system somehow. Before Zevran could respond, a blinding flash swept through the command deck as their shields buckled, destabilized by the magnetic pulse radiating from Earth. Crew members shouted in alarm as control panels blinked and fizzled, sending waves of static through the ship. The once pristine command deck now flickered with warning lights, red and orange halos casting harsh shadows across the room. Adjust course, Zevran commanded, his voice cracking under the strain. But the navigation systems refused to respond, locked in a feedback loop as Earth's magnetic energy resonated through their circuitry. The engineer turned to him, face pale and strained. Captain, we're losing control of the primary thrusters. Every adjustment we make just increases the distortion. Zevran's expression darkened as he processed the scope of their predicament. For the first time, he allowed himself to consider an unthinkable question. Had he underestimated Earth? Below, Owen and Lena watched as the alien ship's trajectory wavered, the amplified magnetic pulse flooding its systems with wave after wave of destabilizing energy. Owen allowed himself a thin smile, though his nerves still crackled with adrenaline. It's working, he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Lena's voice broke the silence. If this holds, they'll be forced to abandon their approach. They can't withstand another direct pulse without critical system failure. Owen glanced at her, catching the glimmer of respect in her eyes. "You know, Lena," he said, a hint of a grin forming, "for a planet full of so-called primitives, Earth's got a few tricks up its sleeve." She chuckled, but the smile quickly faded. "Don't celebrate yet, Doctor. They may be struggling, but they're not retreating. If they manage to adapt, then we'll hit them again," he replied, his voice steady. "As many times as it takes." Their brief moment of triumph dissipated as they focused back on the screen, watching for any sign of the aliens regaining control. Outside, the auroras blazed brighter, wrapping Earth's atmosphere in brilliant arcs of light, beautiful and deadly to any who dared approach unprepared. On the alien ship, Zevran clenched his fists, his mind racing as he scanned the chaotic screens. His crew was losing faith, panic simmering beneath their voices, yet he knew they could not fail. To retreat was unthinkable, a stain on their honor that would never be erased. But as the interference persisted, he felt a dawning respect mingled with fury. Earth was no ordinary conquest. Its defenses, accidental or not, were pushing them to their limits, challenging his assumptions about its inhabitants. For the first time, he considered the possibility that the planet, seemingly wild and untamed, might possess more than just primitive life. It had resilience, resistance, and perhaps something more. A warning light blazed on the command panel. Zevran's heart sank as the display confirmed his fear. The ship's core systems were approaching a critical threshold. "Prepare to stabilize, power focus all energy on shields," he ordered, though he knew the effort might be futile. Owen and Lena held their breath as they watched the alien vessel's descent falter, held back by the relentless power of Earth's magnetic field. A tense silence filled the observatory, charged with anticipation as they awaited the aliens' next move. The ship hovered on the brink, poised between persistence and defeat, as Earth's invisible forces pressed down with unyielding strength. And then, with a final, desperate lurch, the alien vessel pulled back, beaten for now, but still looming, still deadly, just beyond Earth's reach. To be continued. Chapter 3. Why Alien Ships Never Survive Flying Past Earth. Zevran's knuckles whitened as he clutched the command chair, eyes fixed on the Earth looming ahead. Every fiber of his being urged him to push forward, to overcome this maddening interference. Yet as he watched his crew scramble to stabilize the alien vessel, he knew they were nearing their breaking point. Earth's relentless magnetic surges had left their systems battered, their ship barely hanging together. And the worst part? It was all happening because of an insignificant, undeveloped world. His chief engineer's voice cut through the tense silence. "Captain, we can't endure another pulse of this magnitude. If the interference continues to synchronize with our systems, we'll lose propulsion." Entirely. Zevran clenched his jaw. Admitting defeat was unthinkable, yet pressing forward felt equally reckless. "Are there any weaknesses in their magnetic field?" he demanded. "Some way to navigate around these pulses?" The engineer's expression darkened. "Their magnetic field is dense and erratic, Captain. It fluctuates wildly, adapting almost like a sentient force. Attempting to override it would be like fighting a storm with bare hands." Zevran fell silent, weighing his options. Then he gave a slight nod, a steely glint in his eye. "Prepare a communications beacon. If Earth insists on resistance, let them understand the price." Back on Earth, Dr. Owen Marcus reviewed the latest data from the alien ship with a mix of fascination and anxiety. His pulse quickened as he analyzed the readings. Whatever they'd tried against the vessel had succeeded beyond his wildest expectations, yet the ship still loomed ominously in orbit. Major Lena Torres's voice crackled over the comms. "Owen, we've received an encoded transmission from the alien ship. The signal's strong. Seems they're done with subtlety." Owen's stomach knotted as he glanced at Lena, who was standing beside the display, her arms crossed. "What does it say?" "It's a warning," she replied, her tone somber. "They're demanding that Earth cease all interference or face severe consequences. They don't specify what those are, but I doubt it's a bluff." He let out a slow breath, the weight of the situation settling over him. He knew they were operating on borrowed time. Whatever was keeping Earth protected whether the auroras or the unique electromagnetic properties could weaken or even dissipate. They needed a plan that would shift the advantage decisively. "They're bluffing," he muttered, though the uncertainty crept into his voice. "If Earth's natural field is disrupting them this much, they're desperate. We just have to maintain the interference long enough for them to consider retreat." Lena's gaze was unyielding. "Desperate enemies are the most dangerous, Doctor. If they decide to risk it all, we're dealing with forces beyond anything we've ever faced." Owen's mind raced. If they attempt a last-ditch effort, we might have one option left: a high-frequency EM burst targeted at the ship's core. If we can sync it with the auroras, we could overload their systems completely. Lena raised a brow, intrigued. "You want to weaponize Earth's own magnetic phenomena?" "It's already doing most of the work," he replied, a grim smile on his face. "We'd just be nudging it along. But to pull this off, we'd need precise timing and full access to the northern satellite array." Lena didn't hesitate. "I'll make the call. If they plan on hitting us, they won't see this counterstrike coming." On the alien vessel, Zevran watched his crew as they struggled to steady their frayed nerves. It was clear they shared his frustration and confusion. No one could understand how Earth, of all places, could be such a thorn in their side. The pulse from Earth had subsided, and an eerie silence settled over the command deck. He seized the moment to address his crew, his voice a steady force against the growing chaos. "We are the Empire," he began, his voice steady but laced with anger. "We do not retreat from any world, least of all from one as unrefined as this. We will press forward and end this interference by any means necessary. Prepare to activate the gravitational disruptor. If Earth's forces wish to push, we will push back." The crew sprang into action, calibrating the disruptor to channel a wave of energy capable of disrupting Earth's magnetic field. Zevran knew the weapon was experimental, but desperate times called for bold actions. The disruptor had the potential to nullify Earth's magnetic defenses long enough for them to bypass the interference and establish control. Failure, however, meant catastrophic feedback into their own systems. As they initiated the sequence, the ship's hull trembled, echoing with the eerie hum of the disruptor building power. In the observatory, Owen and Lena monitored the alien ship with bated breath. The readings showed a sudden surge of power, an energy spike unlike anything they'd seen before. "They're going for a large-scale attack," Owen realized, horror flickering in his eyes. "If they neutralize Earth's magnetic field, our natural defenses will collapse." Lena's face hardened. "Then it's time to trigger the burst. Now or never, Doctor." Owen's fingers flew over the control panel, aligning the northern satellites with the ship's trajectory. The auroras shimmered above, crackling with energy, as he directed Earth's magnetic field to pulse in sync with the satellites. "All right, and now?" A burst of energy raced up from the poles, channeled through Earth's atmosphere like a glowing shield. The auroras blazed, casting an ethereal light across the night sky. The concentrated pulse struck the alien vessel, its electromagnetic core now flooded with more power than it could handle. On board, Zevran barely had time to shout as the ship was overwhelmed by the sudden surge. The disruptor overloaded, sending ripples of energy across the command deck. Sparks rained from above as the ship's systems collapsed one by one, warning sirens blaring a cacophony of failure. He stumbled, gripping the console as the lights flickered. "Divert all remaining power to the engines," he yelled, his voice drowned by the roar of collapsing systems. His engineer's face was pale as he shouted back, "It's too late. The core's destabilizing. We have to evacuate." But the damage was done. The ship convulsed as the combined forces of Earth's magnetic field and the burst from the auroras sent it spiraling into chaos. Panels exploded, and the vessel's hull fractured under the strain, the once imposing craft now a blazing wreck in the upper atmosphere. Below, in the observatory, Owen and Lena watched in stunned silence as the alien ship faltered, its bright, blinding lights slowly fading against the distant backdrop of space. Owen exhaled a long, shaky breath, relief mingling with disbelief. They didn't stand a chance against Earth, he murmured, almost to himself. Lena managed a faint smile. Her voice softened with newfound respect. Maybe we're not as primitive as they thought. Owen chuckled, glancing up at the night sky as the auroras began to fade. Something tells me they'll think twice before flying by this little blue planet again. As they watched the alien wreckage drift into the void, an unspoken understanding passed between them, a shared pride in their planet's strength, one that neither technology nor empire could overcome. To be continued. Chapter 4. Why Alien Ships Never Survive Flying Past Earth. The early morning sky glowed softly as the sun crept over the horizon. Dr. Owen Marcus and Major Lena Torres stood side by side on a quiet hill, gazing up at the remnants of the alien vessel as it floated in pieces, fragments of machinery and metal scattered across the upper atmosphere. For the first time since the alien encounter began, the silence felt comforting. Owen finally broke the silence. You'd think that after all that happened, I'd be used to this quiet. But it feels surreal. Lena nodded, her gaze unwavering. Maybe that's the sign of a victory that truly mattered, she replied. It's strange, though, isn't it? They came here expecting us to be an easy conquest, and instead, they found Earth itself fighting back. Owen's lips twisted into a small smile. Earth isn't just rock and water. We have more than we realize, a world that doesn't need advanced weapons to defend itself. Their attention was pulled to the horizon, where streaks of light showed the first re-entry of alien debris into the atmosphere. The atmosphere ignited fragments into fiery trails as they descended, giving Earth a powerful final say in the aliens' failed invasion. Do you think they'll try again? Owen asked, his tone subdued but weighted with concern. Lena's expression was firm. If they're smart, they'll think twice before sending another ship here. Word of a failed conquest spreads fast in the galaxy. That's the thing about ambition, it's sharp, but it cuts deep if you wield it carelessly. The memory of the battle lingered between them. They had faced an impossible threat and survived. And yet, Owen's scientific curiosity hadn't faded. Lena, there's one thing I'm still trying to understand, he admitted. Why did Earth's magnetic field respond so actively to their presence? It was almost like it knew what to do. Lena turned to face him, her face thoughtful. You think Earth itself has a form of defense mechanism? Something beyond what we can measure? Owen hesitated. It's a possibility. We may not have all the answers now, but Earth's uniqueness might be far more complex than we assumed. The planet's magnetic field, the auroras, they're more than beautiful lights in the sky. They're part of a system that reacts, adapts. Maybe it's a natural phenomenon that developed to protect life. Or maybe it's something else. Lena let the idea settle before responding. Maybe that's the reason why we're so drawn to it. Humanity and Earth. We're linked in ways we don't fully understand. The conversation faded as they both watched the sky. The debris continued to burn up in vibrant streaks, marking the final end of the alien vessel. Owen felt a sense of closure washing over him. The worst was over, and Earth had held its own. Suddenly, Lena's earpiece crackled to life. She held a hand up, listening carefully as a familiar voice came through. Major Torres, we've received an encrypted transmission. Owen and Lena exchanged a glance. Another transmission? He asked, heart thudding in his chest. Lena nodded slowly, her face taut. But it's not coming from the alien wreckage. Owen's pulse raced as he leaned closer. Then who sent it? Lena's expression turned unreadable as she listened. It's coming from deep space, farther out than the alien ship. Whoever they are, they've been watching. Owen's mind raced, trying to process the implications. Are they one of ours? She shook her head. No, it's a beacon, a warning signal. Whoever is out there, they're letting us know that they saw what happened here. And they're staying away. Owen's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't an isolated event. Earth's defense had reverberated through the galaxy, sending a message louder than words. It's a deterrent, he said, almost in awe. A cosmic warning sign. As they stood there, Lena's voice softened. Earth might be more powerful than we realized. For years, we've looked to the stars and assumed we were vulnerable because of our lack of advanced technology. But maybe Earth itself has a way of communicating our strength. Owen let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. And if the galaxy knows that, maybe we'll have time to catch up. We'll have time to grow and build on what we've learned. Lena glanced at him, a small smile creeping across her face. Looks like we're not so insignificant after all. They watched the morning light breaking fully across the sky, the first real dawn of peace since the encounter began. It wasn't a victory with banners or applause, but it felt profound. Earth had spoken, not with voices, but with a force that resonated in the fabric of the universe. And as its inhabitants, they felt that resonance deep within, a connection that bound them together with their home. As they walked back toward the base, Owen's thoughts were already swirling with theories, possibilities, and new ideas for study. There were no limits now to what humanity could accomplish. With a universe full of mysteries ahead and a planet that had proven to be its own greatest ally. "Let's not waste this opportunity, Lena," he said as they neared the base. "We have work to do." Lena nodded, her gaze fixed ahead. "The stars may be out there, but we've got something right here worth protecting. And they'll know we're ready for them if they ever come back." Owen chuckled softly, feeling a surge of pride. Humanity's first line of defense wasn't weapons or technology. It was the spirit of Earth itself. Somehow, that feels right. And as the morning sun climbed higher, casting its light on a world forever changed, Owen and Lena felt a new resolve taking root. Their mission was no longer just survival. It was growth, discovery, and a shared journey into the boundless unknown, united by a planet that had protected them with forces unseen and power yet untapped. End of story.